Good morning. Welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. This is Robert Phoenix, and thanks for hanging out as I get through some little Mercury retrogradism. I've changed the studio around, which means that there's new software and new equipment, and I'm still trying to work out a few of the bugs as we take advantage of Mercury retrograde here in South Central Texas. What's happening in America? What's happening in planet Earth? You know, before I jump into today's regularly scheduled programming, I just wanted to give thanks to the people that listen and support in their own way, either energetically or throwing the odd donation out there to keep this little project I've got going. And it's really an amazing privilege to be able to do this, even though it's, I get up and I do some research, put some thoughts together. Maybe there's a sort of accumulated, talking points that I've had rummaging around in my head for the past 24 hours. It's really an amazing privilege to be able to do this, even if I don't have 10,000, 20,000 listeners, followers. It's all good, because the people that do hang out and do listen and do connect with the material through me, it's a real blessing because I've gotten to know some of you in a kind of a personal way, and it's just great. And even just being on Facebook through the show and through the website, people will start conversations with me, or they'll reach out to me, and it's kind of cool. Certainly wasn't like this 30 years ago. 20 years ago, we were starting to kind of creep up, right? When we get to 2018, 2019, those are going to be pretty intense times. 2018, 2019. But we get up to 2018, 2019. We're roughly on right around that 20-year anniversary of the internet, because by 1998, 1999, we were starting to see some critical mass begin to migrate into the net space, and of course that's when the internet stocks on the NASDAQ began to take off and were swallowed up and squashed and all that good stuff that was done by Goldman Sachs and who is it? Not Bear Stearns. I think Bear Stearns might have been involved. Just to give you guys a time capsule rendering. Since I was in the .com world, it was an amazing time to be a part of something because it was all very fresh, it was all new, and if you had a modicum of imagination and some connections and a bankroll, you could theoretically either A, make a lot of money, or B, get vested for an idea or project that might actually have some legs. And a lot of the stuff during that time was either mismanaged by youth. And so we're talking 1998, 97, 98, 99, and you had 30-year-old kids who were born in the late 60s essentially running companies. And because they knew code, they knew how to build things, and they had kind of an idea about, a nascent idea about what it would be like to share content. And then you had a bunch of people who had a lot of money And they said, okay, we'll throw down behind these young guys because this is the future. And right now they've got the keys to the car. So I saw a lot of that, and I saw a lot of like incredible mismanagement of money and resources. But the way that the game was set up, you almost had to mismanage your money and resources. So this is how it would work. So let's say you had an idea for a music company that had downloadable music, these crazy files called MP3s. And you started a company, and somebody said, boy, that's a great idea. This could revolutionize the music world. So why don't you take $50 million and go start your company? And I say, yeah, great, $50 million. Then you go out, you buy an office space, you start hiring people, you build the infrastructure. Well, the thing that the stock or the initial offering, which is really kind of what it is, it's an investment, right? And there are stipulations behind that offering or behind that investment that says you got to use that money. You got to use that money in a year or else you lose it. So these were the rules of engagement with the dot-coms. So you had a limited amount of time to use that money so you could get to market and turn a profit, and 95% of them couldn't do it. The kind of the established idea was that you would go out and you'd buy a business, a pre-existing business, and try to fold it into your business and see if it would work and get traction and get users. That was the idea for the company that I worked with, which was MP3. It was not MP3. It was eMusic. I did eventually work in the offices of MP3.com later, but initially it was eMusic, and eMusic went out and they bought RollingStone.com because they thought that they could use RollingStone.com as a platform to sell MP3s, and it was a good idea. But unfortunately, Jan Wenner, who ran RollingStone.com and was the publisher of Rolling Stone, crafted the deal in such a way that he still retained editorial control. I mean, basically, he said, they were paying for name, brand recognition, and links, but at the end of the day, RollingStone.com still determined everything pretty much from a marketing perspective. So what would happen then is that these companies would get to the end of their funding, and they would go or get close to going belly up, and so you'd see all these companies fold up, close shop, people lose their jobs. It was like the gold rush, and all of a sudden the river stopped producing gold, and then you had a bunch of people running around trying to figure out what to do at that point. It was a really interesting time, and especially being inside of a company where they have to downsize, and it was like Survivor or Big Brother. And you just kept moving through to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. This company that I worked for, eMusic.com, got bought twice, and each time I managed to get to the next level because I was good at what I did. I hated playing politics. I hated politics, man. You could see it, even in a kind of a cool, hip kind of music space like that. The politics were everywhere. And I was just like, you just do a good job, you put in a hard day's work, and you do well, and you just keep going. And that's how it worked. But really what was happening is that they being the powers that be, through Lehman Brothers and through Goldman Sachs and all these companies that were doing the arbitrages for the internet companies, is that they would crush them. And then they'd be available, their technology would be available for pennies on the dollar, which is what happened with eMusic, and they'd be bought by a bigger company. In which case, at that time, it was Vivendi. Seagram's Vivendi bought us. So anyway, it's amazing. The people that made the most money off the dot-com rush were the companies that set up the arbitrages. Because when these companies would go public, and they would go public, those companies that set up the arbitrages, like Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs and Bear Stearns, they would get shares, unprotected, meaning that they didn't have to wait a year for their shares to vest. They would get 50,000 shares at 10 cents a share. And so when the stock prices would hit, the IPOs would hit like 40, 50, crazy amounts. What did MP3.com open at? Like $250 a share or some crazy stuff like that. So if you've got an IPO at $250 a share and you've got 50,000 shares that you got at 10 cents a share, that's a nice little bundle. And you were paid fees for everything you did up front to put the IPO together. So that's who made the money during the dot-com era. And it was a way to control everything. And I watched it all happen, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. Here we have the potential for real innovation. And the rules of engagement cut it off in such a way that you couldn't really develop an idea or product past a year. You couldn't save your money. You couldn't weather a downturn. Because let's say your year comes up and you've got, out of your $50 million, you've got $20 million in your war chest, and you want to use that to ride out the next couple of years. You couldn't do that. It wasn't part of the game. It was all rigged. And then we had MP3.com, not MP3, Napster get involved. And once Napster, I'll never forget it. I was at one of these, digital mixers. It was really early in my career there. And I'd come out of music journalism and working for a real outside magazine called Mondo 2000. And they barely hired me. They barely hired me at this company because I think I might have looked like a Hell's Angel. And I remember talking to somebody on the inside, and I had great credentials, by the way. But I remember talking to somebody on the inside, and they were like, there was this guy named Steve. I won't say his last name. And this one guy said, you scared the shit out of Steve. Steve and I actually became good friends later on. He was a Christian, still is. We became good friends, and good guy. But Steve hadn't encountered somebody like me before. But I got hired. It was interesting. I went to this digital mixer in San Francisco, and I'll never forget it. There was a guy who was in music journalism, and he talked about this little thing called Napster. And he said, Napster is going to change music as we know it. It is the atomic bomb of the music industry. And I sat there and I listened to basically what this guy had experienced as a early adopter for Napster, and I thought to myself, holy shit, man. Here I got this really good gig. Good salary, companies in a really nice part of California. And I could, and this came to me later in my life, right? Like, I'm 40 years old, and I'm coming into the dot-com world. I've come out of this kind of maverick music journalism, kind of, just working for this crazy magazine in Northern California. I'm like, yeah, okay, I did it. I made it through this unique portal, and I got to this place, and all of a sudden, boom. This is the power of Uranus. This is the power of Aquarius. This has changed through technology. There was a better technology that had just exploded, and it was Napster. And I knew in that moment, it's like the company I was working for, we were screwed. We were screwed because we were actually charging for music, and it wasn't every single song on the in the catalog. In Napster, it was. In Napster, you could get anything. People were uploading entire music collections. Just passing along. It was unlike anything that had ever been created at that point in time. I mean, I would venture to say that Napster and file sharing were as mind-blowing and culture-changing as the Gutenberg Bible. And so we managed to continue to run the business for a while. But eventually, we had some hardcore users, but we never hit that maximum threshold. And we were purchased for our technology for the most part, and some of the marketing people. Anyway, that was a long time ago. Little Mercury retrograde reminiscence. But you can see, though, in that business model just how, to some extent, the game is rigged. Like the stipulation of getting that startup money and making sure that you had to use it in a year, or whatever you didn't use, you lost. It was 1 year. It wasn't 2. It wasn't 3. They didn't, they wanted return on their investment, or they were going to get most of their money back, whatever it was. And you had, like I said, a lot of green young guys, a lot of really great beer bashes, a lot of great office parties, a lot of great product launches. If you were a DJ during that time, and you had some credibility and some billing power, like you could show up and be one of the top 4 DJs and kind of at an event. You were doing well. You were doing really, really well. I remember there was this guy named Kiyoki, DJ Kiyoki. I actually interviewed him. He was kind of a really messed up kid, but a really good DJ. And I remember going to an event for a product launch, and there he was. He probably made 10 to 15 grand easy that night, maybe more, depending upon the company. And that's how a lot of the money was spent. Anyway, let's get into real time. Let's get into present time. We are talking about, I got a YouTube comment here on, what do we got here? Sometimes, should go real time on this. Let's just see. Here we go. This is about the aftermath of Charlottesville. Where the people with technical expertise come on, develop the YouTube, the same but with a different name, leave YouTube in the dust. It's, you know what? It is, this is from LS. They just put this up 43 seconds ago. The expertise is out there. The expertise was out there. Or it is out there. The problem is the numbers and the bandwidth. So to be able to put together a competitor to YouTube, that's not the problem, because that technology is out there. The challenge is to be able to, this is one of the reasons why Vimeo is kind of the ghetto in some ways, the barrio of video, because Vimeo is limited. Like, I think you can only put up, I don't know, I could be wrong. I've seen episodes of TV shows on Vimeo. I believe that Vimeo's challenge is they just don't have the same bandwidth and capacity that YouTube has. So if there's going to be a competitor to YouTube, then ultimately that person or persons would have to create something where an MPEG-4 would be half the size of an MPEG-4. So if that was the case, then you could, or they could, basically create either a compressed version of an MP4 or create an entirely new codec. And that codec, so let's say there's, I don't know, I have no idea how many videos are on YouTube. Let's say there's 20 million videos on YouTube. So if you had a compressed version of an MP4, or you had another format of an MP4, you would get basically half the size. So you'd have 10 million videos instead of 20 million videos. And believe it or not, that might make a big difference. So I think that if there's going to be a competitor to YouTube, it would also have to be an innovation in terms of the actual media format that we watch these videos in, because then it would be easier for somebody to have less money and less resources in terms of server farms and storage space and cloud, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's my take on that. We're going to get into Charlottesville now, and one of the people that I really like who contributes to comments is Chris Houston, and Chris brings some good astrological stuff. And there's a controversy around the car, around the Dodge Charger. And it's interesting because the Charger was the same, it's the same car, different year obviously, but it's the same car that was used in the movie The Dukes of Hazzard. None of these things are by accident. So Chris, if I can find Chris's email here, or comment, he basically says that the cars are different. One has a sunroof, the other doesn't. One has deeply tinted windows, the other doesn't. And even the picture, the one brief picture that we have of the guy behind the wheel, and then the picture we have of James Fields. Why are they all named James, these guys? Anyway, there's that James Wesley Howell, who still has not really gone through his due process out in Southern California as part of the Orlando event, correct? Now keep in mind that they have been running these car scenes, cars crashing into things all around the world, okay? They've been having these car scenes, car crashes in London. They've had them in Paris. You know, they've been working on the car crash technology, so to speak. So they've had some time to kind of work out some of the kinks and make sure that they have everybody in place when these events happen. So we have a difference in the cars. One had tinted windows, the other didn't have tinted windows. We actually have a physical difference in the drivers. Now there's more to this. Speaking of Vimeo, there's a video that surfaced on Vimeo because it's been banned on YouTube, where there is a drone capture of what was happening at the scene of the accident. It's a really kind of mind-blowing video. Because what you see in the video is you see the intersection, it's a crossroads, which is interesting, just from a symbolic perspective. You've got 4 streets intersecting, right? And then you can see from this drone that there's nothing outside of this crossroads. Absolutely nothing. Like if this was really a massive, wild, chaotic protest, and that's not to say that it wasn't at some point, like they established at some point when the people from the alt-right went walking through the gauntlet that there was aggression and even when they were in the park, I mean they established the fact that there was some heavy action going on, okay? But once that was established, and that's all they needed to do was establish that. Now they're above, now this drone is above the action, above the fray, and apparently this is like going to be the Zapruder film of Charlottesville. This drone, I believe this drone image will be like the Zapruder film because there was a guy who was interviewed on the streets, and apparently this is his drone and his footage, and he's like the new Abraham Zapruder. And you can look at this crowd, and the crowd there's a fire truck there. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it looks like a movie scene. It looks like a movie scene. It looks like a movie set. And then, of course, there's the action that takes place, which is not filmed by the drone, which is why this is kind of the new Zapruder film. There's frames left out. So now we get to see this, and apparently this video has been banned on YouTube. You can go to Vimeo and check it out. It's available. Maybe I'll put the link up in the show page here. You'll get it on YouTube. Maybe even here in the description for this video. I'm sorry, this broadcast. So now we have that going on. It's like, well, what's really happening there? And we know that crowds, and literally not crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, which is what George Webb uses, but sourcing crowds to create events is big business. We see the ads in Craigslist all the time. There are companies that produce crowds. If you go back and you look at what happened in Manchester prior to the Ariana Grande concert, they were basically using crowds and crowd actors to act out an emergency situation where a bomb had gone off. The video is out there. It's out there. So we know that events can be staged, just like we know, hello, the Boston Marathon was staged. So if they can stage the Boston Marathon, okay, and if they can stage the Boston, which was pretty good, but if you drill down, all of a sudden you see lots of glaring discrepancies with the Boston Marathon. It's pretty easy to see. So then, if they could do that, then why couldn't they do that in a place like Charlottesville? And if they knew that this was going to happen for a while, then they could easily plan and stage whatever it is they needed to plan and stage at that event. It's not out of the question. Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they take advantage of this and then turn it all against Trump and conservatives, the alt-right, or people that are just wanting to be engaged in uncovering the truth? And the bottom line is, guess what? We're getting close. We're getting close. We have been getting close to getting down and drilling into who's doing what and why. And guess what happens when that occurs? You get people like the ADL involved, and they're going to be the thought police for YouTube. And they're going to be the thought police for Facebook, and they're going to be the thought police for Google. And all of a sudden now, lines are being drawn. Lines are being drawn. And then we have an event like this, which is completely flammable, and could actually really lead to a quote unquote race war, which is obviously what these people want. Because out of it, what do you have? You have chaos, absolute chaos. And when the chaos ensues, then they can insert their new programs. Because really what they want, obviously, and we know this, is they want a one world government, one world order, one world currency. They want it all mapped now to ACC, where everything has a digital price tag on it. Everything gets digitized and has a value. The entire planet becomes digitized. Everything. And who owns the planet at that point? Most people can't see this, and even the most frothing people on the left or the most frothing people on the right, they can't see this. They don't understand what's going on. They're being used as pawns. Now, that's not to say that we abdicate our position when it comes to peeling back the layers, because we have to. We have to. It's part of the human experience. What we do with our emotion after that, that's a whole different story. And I've got a really, really, really good friend who was sending me some texts that came from her cousin, and was all about her cousin's screed about Trump and fascists and racists. And I mean, this event that happened in Charlottesville, for them, that was like, for them, that was the Holy Grail. That was like Indiana Jones walking in and finding the Ark of the Covenant. This Charlottesville event was the Ark of the Covenant for these people. This was everything they need. It wasn't just a smoking gun. It was a smoking howitzer. This is what Charlottesville has done. It's galvanized this idea that people that are on the right, or they're conservative, or they have alternative thoughts about how history has evolved, it has galvanized the other side to demonize these people from this point forward. And they don't see it. They don't understand it. All they do is they act from a reflexive and an emotional place where they're being played, absolutely played like puppets. And you can tell them that, and they won't listen. And they can say, "Oh, you're being played. Look at you. Look, yeah, you've been indicted." No, bullshit. Bullshit. I'm still waiting for somebody on the left, other than Tulsi Gabbard and Dennis Kucinich and Cynthia McKinney, to really step up and show us something different than just the party politique. It's not happening. Anyway, so here we are, more and more pieces of the puzzle. Remember yesterday I said this happened with Mercury Station, and there are going to be people speaking out. Well, what do you know? August 15th, a Charlottesville police officer has come forward to express his anger at being told to stand down by the city mayor during violent clashes between protesters. He also claims the protests, which pitched white supremacists against members of Antifa, were set up to further the agenda of the elites. This is what he says. This is from a website called The Ugly Truth. We, Charlottesville police, were ordered to bring the rival groups together as soon as they were in contact with each other. We were told to stand down. It was outrageous. We weren't allowed to arrest anyone without asking the mayor first. We weren't even allowed to stop the driver as he sped away. The whole driver piece, we have to really try to understand from a more theatrical perspective. The event was being set up as far back as at least May. There we go. This is exactly what we're talking about, and it went like clockwork. Michael Seiner, the mayor of Charlottesville, ordered police to stand down during the most chaotic and destructive period of the protests. We've seen this before. There's nothing new about that. Despite police protests against the orders, we wanted to do our job, keep the peace, but these mother blankers in charge really want to destroy America. Fox News reporter Doug McKelway was on the scene, and he backs this up. Yes, the video of McKelway is out there. You can see it. This guy goes on to further state, I can say, having been in Emancipation Park from early on that morning, that what I saw with my own two eyes confirms what this law enforcement source told us. This is Doug McKelway, I believe. At least from all visible appearances, we saw people coming out of that park who had head wounds, who were bleeding from the head, people walking into that park with bats, with sticks. You saw what they were wearing, helmets, body armor. They had come, and this pertains to both sides. They had come to do damage. You cannot help but notice from that video that police had been more proactive. They could have potentially calmed this thing down to some degree. That's absolutely right. Michael Seiner is a Virginia Democratic activist with close ties to Barack Obama and John Podesta. Before landing the Charlottesville mayor job, he previously worked closely with Podesta, how about that, at the Center of American Progress, and worked with him again on Barack Obama's State Department transition team. The New World Order, led in the United States by elite operatives, Obama, Podesta, Soros, Clinton, and company, are pulling out all the stops to create division through chaos and destruction. Okay, this is actually the site itself. I just wanted to bring that up. If that is true, look, here's where I think we are right now. If this is a true statement from a police officer in Charlottesville, and really the future of America is kind of on the line, don't you want to come public? Don't you want to come public? I mean, if you had to lose your job and save what, was it 700 million people here in this country? Wouldn't it be worth it? Wouldn't it be worth it? And if you did that, wouldn't you at some point actually be rewarded for your bravery? Don't you think maybe some company, some security company might say, you know what, you're good. We want you. Come work for us. We'll double your salary. This is where we are. This is where it's at right now. If there are people on the inside who absolutely know what's going on, and they're on the fringe, they're not totally or fully compromised, this is where they're going to have to step out. Not just these unnamed sources, not just the leaks. We're talking people taking real responsibility, putting their name out there, and stating facts as factually as they can with as much evidence to back it up. This is where it's at right now. Now, there are times, unfortunately, where things like that do happen, can happen. But because the mainstream media is so completely corrupted and co-opted, there are times when that material may not see the light of day, or if it does, it'll just be a brief crack of light into the darkened potential that we're all facing right now. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, and it feels to me like this is complete and utter. We use the word false flag. I would say that this is a psyop, a psychological operation, and we're going to be spending a lot of time on it. And then we've got North Korea kind of on the back burner, and continue to watch what's happening there. And then we've got the chaos in Venezuela. And of course, behind everything is the digitization of all assets. And it's a wonderful time to be alive. We're in the deconstruction phase. You're not going to get through this alone. You can't do it alone. This is not going to work. I mean, from a spiritual level, you're gonna have to hook up with as one of my favorite listeners, the Most High. You're going to have to hook up with the Most High in order to get through this time, and that's the bottom line. It's really the bottom line. And if enough of us do that, if enough of us can connect in with that source, which is available to each and every one of us, if you have a relationship with Sananda, Yeshua, Emmanuel, that's great. Hey, bring it in, because I think the more that we do that, the more that we're able to actually potentially change the current reality we're in. Hey, how about that? Now, we may have to go through some trials and tribulations, but you can't go through it alone. And you can't go through it alone from your own personal perspective as well. You need community. You need people around you. You need to be able to support each other and lean on one another and help one another. This is really where it's at. And if anything, this time should be teaching us that, because we understand that the powers that be aren't really there, and they're not really cooperating towards resolving a lot of this for our own edification, benefit, and evolution as a society. It's not there. We've seen it again and again and again. How much more do we need to see? So we need to build out some of our own efforts here and support each other and reach out. If you live in an area where you have some neighbors that are like-spirited, connect with these people. Just connect with them. Do things with them. Bring them food. Build bridges again, because during some of these times that are coming, you just might need those relationships and those bonds and the ability to trust. So you can't go through it alone. You have to have a spiritual agency that you are working with every single day at a high level to improve the quality of your life, to improve the quality of other people's lives, to be able to broadcast it, because you are a transceiver, believe it or not. Yes, 5G is in the wings, and that's a whole other nightmare scenario that we're going to have to at some point get into. But you are the ultimate transceiver. You are the focal point and the node of all that's divine, powerful, beyond any of this. Remember that. That's who you are. I have to remind myself sometimes that that's who we are. We transcend, the limitations, but we only transcend the limitations when we become the transceiver of that spiritual focus that comes through us. And when it does, boy, you can move mountains. And this is where we have to go. And deconstructing, where we are is really important. When I look at this, it's kind of like the combination of John the Baptist and Jesus, right? John the Baptist was political. That's why he lost his head. And Jesus was not necessarily Sananda, whatever. He was not that way, right? He was like, look, they said, hey, look, here we are. You can overthrow the money lenders. I'm not going to second guess that. Might have. I don't know. I might have done it. But it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. They wanted to turn him into their conquering king, and he says, no, I'm the Prince of Peace. That's not what I do. But I think if you put John the Baptist and Sananda together, I think you have the model. That's just my own humble opinion. All right, we're 39 minutes into this thing today. Thank you for showing up and hanging out while I got it all together with the sort of the new studio technology stuff. And I'll be back tomorrow, 24 hours from today. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart just open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have a great day.